A famous construction firm in Mumbai once started building a luxury high rise without a master schedule, assuming the teams would just figure it out as they went along. By the time they reached the 10th floor, they realized the electrical conduits didn't match the structural layout, costing them millions in rework and months of delays. Audit planning is exactly like that master schedule. It is the difference between a smooth professional operation and a chaotic, stressful mess. In ISO 42001 terms, planning is the process of defining the audit scope, criteria, and objectives to ensure we cover all critical AI management system processes. Simply put, it is asking what are we checking, why are we checking it, and what are the rules we are comparing it against. If you walk into an audit without a plan, you are just wandering around looking at folders, which helps nobody. You need to know exactly which AI systems are in scope, like the high-risk hiring algorithms or the sensitive medical data processors, before you ever step foot on site. You must define the boundaries of your audit so you don't get sidetracked by irrelevant data. So now that we have mastered the core concept of why a plan is the foundation of an audit, you might be wondering how we decide which areas of a company to focus on first. Imagine you are a security consultant tasked with protecting a massive shipping port in Chennai. You cannot monitor every single container simultaneously. There are simply too many and your time is limited. So, you focus your resources on the crates containing high-value electronics or hazardous chemicals, while using automated scanners for the standard dry goods. This is the heart of risk-based auditing. The standard defines this as focusing audit activities on areas of greatest significance to the AI management system. In simple words, this means we look for where the most damage could occur if things go wrong. If you are auditing a fintech firm, you don't spend all your time in the cafeteria or checking basic office supplies. You spend it on the AI that makes real-time credit decisions. You've probably seen auditors who waste time checking low-impact documentation while the critical AI models remain untested. Don't be that person. You need to look for the hotspots, the high-risk AI applications, where a mistake would mean a major data breach, a privacy leak, or a massive regulatory fine. By identifying these risks upfront through a risk assessment, you ensure your limited audit time is spent where it actually makes a difference. So, now that we've mastered the art of focusing on what really counts, you might be wondering how we assemble the right group of people to get the job done. Well, that brings us to our next step, forming the audit team. A top-tier hospital in Delhi once tried to perform a complex technical audit using only general management consultants. They knew how to check signatures on paper, but they couldn't tell if the AI's training data was actually contaminated or if the model was drifting. The audit failed because they lacked the specific technical competence. ISO 42001 requires the audit team to have the necessary knowledge and skills to perform the audit objectively. Simply put, you need the right mix of people. Someone who understands the technical AI architecture, someone who understands the legal requirements, and someone who knows the business processes. It is like putting together a surgical team. You wouldn't want a cardiologist performing brain surgery, and you wouldn't want a legal expert trying to debug a complex neural network. When you assign your team, make sure their expertise matches the specific AI systems you are auditing. If you don't have the right person for the task, you will miss the technical nuances that hide the biggest risks. You need a team that can speak the language of the developers and the language of the board members. So now that we've mastered how to select the right experts to support our audit, you might be wondering how we coordinate with the organization to ensure everyone is ready for us. Well, that brings us to our next step, pre-audit communication. Think about an unexpected, unannounced safety inspection at a manufacturing plant in Pune. If the plant manager isn't expecting you, the staff will be nervous, the documents will be scattered in different departments, and you will spend half the day just finding the right keycard. This is why pre-audit communication is vital. The standard requires clear arrangements to be made for the audit, including the timing, location, and access to information. In simple words, you need to let the auditee know exactly what you are going to check and when. You are not trying to catch them out or be a detective in a movie. You are a professional ensuring that the management system is functioning as intended. Send them your checklist, tell them which departments you need to see, and explain the objective of your visit. When they are prepared, they are transparent. When they are prepared, the evidence is waiting on the desk, not buried in a drawer. This professional courtesy saves everyone a massive amount of time, reduces anxiety, and builds the trust required for an honest, open audit. So now that we've mastered the need for clear communication and preparation, you might be wondering how we handle the actual collection of information once we arrive. Well, that brings us right into our next step, which is information gathering and sampling. A quality control expert at a massive textile factory in Kolkata needs to check the quality of 10,000 shirts. She cannot check every single one, so she selects a random statistically significant sample of 500. If the sample is good, the batch is good. As an auditor, you do the same thing with documentation. You cannot read every line of code or every internal email, so you gather objective evidence through sampling. The standard defines this as obtaining information through observation, interviews, and document review to verify that the management system is working. If you're auditing a company's AI bias policy, you don't just look at one perfect record. You look at a variety of records over different time periods and across different departments. You verify by asking, "Can you show me how this works for a recent case?" You are building a narrative based on samples that represent the whole system. If your samples show the same pattern, consistently compliant or consistently broken, you have found your conclusion. Stay with me here. A good auditor is always looking for the trend, not just the single lucky success. So, now that we have mastered how to use sampling to verify a system, you might be wondering what to do when your findings don't match the policy. Well, that brings us right to our next step, managing non-conformities. Imagine you are a flight safety auditor and you notice that the landing gear mechanism on a new jet is missing a required safety pin. You don't just ignore it because it's a small part or because the plane looks fine otherwise. You document it, classify it as a non-conformity, and ensure there is a plan to fix it immediately. A non-conformity is simply a failure to meet the requirements of the ISO 42001 standard. In simple words, it is the gap between what the company said they would do and what they actually did. When you find these gaps, your job is not to punish. It is to document the evidence so the organization can improve. I have seen auditors try to hide findings to avoid conflict, but that is a disservice to the company. If you find a gap in their AI governance, you are giving them the vital data they need to protect their reputation and their customers. When you finish your report, you are leaving them with a roadmap for how to get stronger, safer, and more compliant. You have taken them from the planning phase all the way to the final review, acting as the professional guide for their AI journey.